Acquiring a business? BizNexus simplifies it. Access thousands of updated opportunities in our DIY marketplace or supercharge team sourcing with OmniSource, your all-in-one platform for on-market, off-market, and coming-soon deals. Scale smarter today. Learn more or book a demo at www.biznexus.com.
Disclaimer from the always present legal team. Podcast conversations don't necessarily reflect the views of BizNexus Incorporated. Everything you hear is informational news and updates from around the industry. We're not recommending any investments. We're not offering any investment advice. Be sure to do your own homework.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into something specific. Buying a company in the national security and critical manufacturing sectors.
That's right. And we're focusing particularly on the, let's say, lower middle market segment. It's a unique area.
Definitely. Our guide here is the Buy-Side M&A Playbook, National Security and Critical Manufacturing. It's part of the SVDG, the Silicon Valley Defense Group's industry toolkit. Really practical stuff.
It is. And, for anyone listening who's involved in M&A or maybe just curious, these sectors, well, they're just different from your standard deals.
How so, exactly?
Well, think about the heavy government regulation, the sensitive tech, the government contracts. It adds layers of complexity you just don't see elsewhere, especially in that lower middle market niche.
Gotcha. So this deep dive, it's relevant if you're maybe looking to buy or sell or advise, or maybe you're just interested in how these critical industries work, right?
Precisely. We want to cut through some of that complexity. We'll look at things like navigating CFIUS and FOCI, those regulatory hurdles, handling sensitive materials, government contracts, IP rights, and, crucially, the planning. Both pre- and post-acquisition. It's vital.
All right, sounds good. Let's jump in. The SVDG playbook starts us off naturally at the beginning, the pre-term sheet phase.
Yeah, this is where it all kicks off. You've got high-level talks. The buyer's side could be corp dev, strategy people talking with the target's leadership, maybe the founder, CEO, or their advisors.
And the goal initially is just feeling each other out, seeing if there's mutual interest.
Basically, yeah. Validating that interest, getting a first look at the target's value proposition, what specialized assets they might have, and, does it actually fit strategically with the buyer?
And the playbook says the buyer needs to quickly figure out why they're interested. What are those core value drivers?
That's super important. Is it about getting hold of some specific tech, maybe proprietary, maybe even export-controlled tech that got government funding?
Or maybe it's about the people, getting a team with security clearances.
Exactly. Those cleared engineers, program managers, they're gold dust in this sector. Or maybe it's strengthening ties with government customers, getting unique security accreditations, or even specialized manufacturing capabilities that are hard to build from scratch.
And these drivers, they shape the whole deal structure, don't they? Like full acquisition versus a carve-out or just buying assets or an acqui-hire.
Absolutely dictates it. And layered on top of all this, right from the start, is the regulatory environment.
Ah, yes, the government influence.
Huge influence, because so many of these companies, especially in the lower middle market, rely heavily on government contracts or deal with sensitive tech. It impacts feasibility, it impacts timing, everything.
Which leads us to payment structures. The SVDG playbook mentions they often need to be flexible.
They really do. You've got uncertainties like, will this big government contract get renewed? Will we get regulatory approval? So you might see stock consideration or post-closing earnouts tied to hitting certain milestones.
What about just plain cash?
Cash is, well, it's clean for the seller, right? They get the money up front, but it puts the risk of delays, say in getting approvals, onto the buyer. Earnouts are common, often linked to specific contract wins or tech goals.
But they need careful structuring.
Oh, definitely. You have to be really careful not to tie payments too directly to, say, winning a new government contract. That could raise potential, anti-kickback or procurement integrity issues. It's a fine line.
Okay, so you've had the talks, figured out the drivers, got a rough idea on price and structure. Then comes the term sheet, or LOI.
Right. You get that handshake agreement, and then you document the key points. Things like indemnity, escrow, the earnout conditions we just talked about, employee retention plans, maybe founder equity.
And exclusivity, that's a big one here.
Crucial. The exclusivity provision is actually binding. The target agrees, okay, for this period, we only negotiate with you. It gives the buyer a protected window, usually 30 to 90 days, to do their homework, the due diligence, and hammer out the final deal docs without worrying about a rival bidder.
And the SVDG playbook really hammers this home. Get lawyers involved early, especially if it's cross-border, involves foreign ownership, or obviously government contracts or classified work.
Cannot stress that enough. You need specialized CFIUS counsel looking at it right away. Do we need to file under FIRMA? What mitigation might be needed for national security concerns?
And contracts counsel, too.
Yes, especially for asset deals. Can these government contracts actually be transferred post-closing? That's called novation, and it's a whole process. Needs assessment early.
So buyer action items at this stage: get the NDA sorted, maybe make it mutual, set up protocols for handling sensitive info, ITAR, D4s, compliance, and assemble that cross-functional deal team.
Exactly. Finance, legal, tax, HR, compliance, gov contracts, cyber, export controls, maybe even stock admin if stock's involved. You need all hands on deck.
Okay, moving on. Term sheet preparation and negotiation. The playbook says buyer's outside counsel usually drafts this.
Typically, yeah. They'll draft that initial non-binding term sheet, or LOI.
And there's a choice here, right? Streamlined versus detailed.
There is. A streamlined one gets you exclusivity faster. Good if it's competitive, or maybe the target needs things to move quickly.
Right.
But a more detailed term sheet, even though it's non-binding on the main points, tackles more issues up front. And honestly, in these complex sectors, national security, critical manufacturing, hashing out more details early can save a lot of headaches and delays down the road, especially around regulatory stuff or contracts.
Makes sense. And we mentioned CFIUS and OSHI foreign ownership, control, or influence before. The playbook flags this again here.
Big time. If the buyer isn't purely U.S. owned, these issues loom large. You absolutely need that early engagement with CFIUS lawyers. Identify potential national security issues, plan for mitigation like a special security agreement, maybe a proxy board.
And factor that into the timeline.
You have to. The CFIUS review process can take a while, so your exclusivity period in the term sheet needs to account for that potential delay.
And that exclusivity period, usually 30, 90 days, you said, needs to be realistic given potential regulatory holdups.
Absolutely. It needs to be long enough to actually get the necessary diligence done, which might take longer here because of those government contracting or regulatory elements.
And the buyer's board needs to be kept in the loop and approve the final term sheet.
Right. Regular updates to the board, and then formal approval before moving forward, especially if the deal involves issuing stock.
Okay, term sheet signed, exclusivity locked in. Now the deep dive really begins. Confirmatory due diligence. The playbook talks about the DDRL diligence request list and the data room.
Yeah, this is where the buyer sends over a pretty hefty list of everything they want to see, the DDRL, and that list basically tells the target what needs to go into the secure virtual data room.
And not just any data room, right? Security is paramount.
Totally. The playbook mentions vendors like Intralinks or Merrill. These offer much better security than, say, just using Dropbox. You need protocols for handling export-controlled data, maybe classified info. Access has to be tightly controlled, only authorized people, maybe with specific clearances.
And the buyer should push for their preferred vendor early.
Good idea, yeah. Because setting up and populating that data room takes time and effort from the target. So get that DDRL over quickly after the term sheet is signed, especially asking for the sensitive regulatory and compliance stuff first.
And this DDRL isn't just a boilerplate list.
No way. It has to be tailored. For a company in this space, you're asking for specifics on facility security clearances, details on classified contracts, their cybersecurity setup, proof of FARDFARS compliance, things you wouldn't ask a standard software company.
Then there are kickoff calls.
Usually, yes. An internal one first for the buyer's team and advisors, get everyone on the same page about goals, timing, specific focus areas for this lower middle market target.
And then a legal kickoff.
Right, soon after the term sheet. Buyers' lawyers and target's lawyers connect. Focus is on the target's compliance posture, ITAR, ER, cybersecurity readiness, ITAR being the defense export rules, ER covering dual-use items.
Got it. And this often leads to bringing in more specialists.
Often, yes. Third-party experts for deep dives into financials, tax, maybe code scans for software security, and definitely specialized government contract advisors. And again, everyone handling this data needs to follow strict security protocols.
Diligence sounds iterative. You ask questions, get answers, ask more questions.
Exactly. Supplemental requests are common. The playbook notes, for instance, if the target has cost-type government contracts, you really need to probe for any potential False Claims Act issues or ongoing audits. That's a big risk area.
And all this information feeds into a final diligence report from the buyer's lawyers.
Correct. It can be a massive, detailed report. Or sometimes, especially if the buyer is getting rep and warranty insurance, maybe just a red flag summary highlighting the key risks found in those critical areas. Gov contracts, IP regulations, cyber, export controls.
Okay, diligence done. Hopefully no major red flags, or at least understood risks. Now we formalize everything in the definitive agreements.
Right. Buyers outside counsel typically takes the pen again. Drafting the main agreement could be a merger agreement, share purchase, asset purchase. Depends on the structure.
And this agreement has to cover all those national security, regulatory, and government contracting points we keep mentioning.
Absolutely non-negotiable. It has to address them explicitly. Using a standardized form agreement, but one that's already got sector-specific clauses built in, can really help streamline this part.
And there are other documents too, ancillary agreements.
Yep. Joinder agreements, maybe stockholder agreements, various government certifications that might be required. Lots of paperwork.
Plus agreement for key employees.
Critical piece. The buyer usually drafts offer letters, confidentiality agreements, non-competes for essential personnel. And, as the playbook wisely suggests, the target's management might want their own lawyers to look over those personal agreements.
Then the negotiation kicks off. Target responds to the draft. Lawyers summarize issues. Back and forth ensues.
That's the dance. While that's happening, the target is also busy preparing its disclosure schedules. These are super important. They list out all the exceptions to the representations and warranties the target is making in the main agreement. Basically, here's where reality differs slightly from the perfect picture painted in the reps.
And final board approval needed again once the definitive agreement is locked down.
Yes. Buyer needs that final sign-off from their board or relevant committee before anything gets signed.
Okay, agreement signed, deal done.
Not so fast,
Okay.
especially not in this sector, particularly in the lower middle market. Now you enter the post-signing pre-closing phase, and the SVDG playbook warns this often involves more regulatory hoops.
Ah, right. Things like export control reviews, getting government contracts formally novated or amended, maybe that full CFIUS review.
Exactly. And these can add significant time. We're talking potentially 60, maybe 90 days, or even longer if formal government approvals are needed. The closing date isn't certain yet.
So what's the buyer doing during this waiting period?
Staying busy. Final checks on closing financials, detailed planning for onboarding employees, thinking about security clearances, export control access needs, and finalizing the mechanics of the payment. And, critically, maintaining super tight control over any sensitive info, like export-controlled data or CUI-controlled unclassified information.
You mentioned CUI that's unclassified but still needs safeguarding.
Precisely. It's a big category of government info that requires specific handling. And during this pre-closing phase, comprehensive post-closing integration planning is paramount.
What does that involve? Sounds like a lot.
It is. You need a detailed roadmap covering employee onboarding, integrating financial systems, especially hitting those government contract cost accounting standards, insurance, assigning IP properly, technical and security system integration.
Security integration sounds tricky here.
Very. Adhering to cybersecurity standards like DFARS, the new CMMC framework, maybe even keeping systems segregated for a while if needed, plus commercial integration, records management, the list goes on.
And security clearances. That sounds like a major task.
It is. The playbook stresses you need to be proactive, coordinating early with DCSA, the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, to get facility and personnel clearances transferred or new ones initiated smoothly. Especially vital if FOCI mitigation, like an SSA or proxy agreement, is involved.
And the contract novations.
Got to pursue those promptly. The government review is thorough, can take time, and if there's foreign ownership, expect extra scrutiny and needing documentation to show how FOCI risks are mitigated. Even if novation isn't technically required for every contract, the playbook suggests proactively notifying contracting officers on the important ones. Good relationship management.
Okay, finally we get past all that, hit the closing date, post-closing. Now it's all about execution, right? Putting that integration plan into action.
Exactly. But again, with heightened sensitivity because it's national security or critical manufacturing. All those things we plan for regulatory security compliance have to be carefully managed during the integration.
So things like checking employee clearances are still valid, integrating IT systems while keeping data safe, maybe keeping things separate still.
Could be necessary. Aligning financial reporting with government cost rules, legally assigning the IP, integrating tech infrastructure while meeting all the security standards and maintaining any FOCI measures.
Handling commercial aspects according to FARDFARs, managing records properly.
All of that. It's ongoing diligence, really. And it's not just execute and forget.
What do you mean?
Well, the SVDG playbook points out you need ongoing monitoring. Are earnout targets being met, especially those tied to government contracts? Are any indemnity claims popping up before escrow release deadlines? You have to keep watching, especially for regulatory or security compliance issues.
Wow. Okay, so bringing this deep dive together, it's clear buying a company in national security or critical manufacturing, especially in that lower middle market, is, well, it's complicated.
It really is. It's a whole different ballgame than standard M&A. Those regulatory demands, security protocols, the government contract nuances, they shape everything.
And the SVDG playbook's key messages seem to be: get expert help early, do incredibly thorough and tailored diligence, and plan that integration meticulously, always focusing on compliance, security, and contracts.
That's the essence of it. And for you, the learner, understanding these processes, even at a high level, gives you real insight into these vital industries and what makes or breaks deals within them.
So here's something to chew on. Given how much focus there is now on national security tech competition, how might these M&A processes change in the next few years, especially for these lower middle market players? What new challenges or maybe opportunities might pop up?
That's a great question. It's definitely not static. Things like cybersecurity diligence, supply chain security, FOCI mitigation, they're only likely to become more critical. We definitely encourage you, if any of this sparked your interest, to dig deeper. Maybe research CFIUS rules or innovation processes or the latest on CMMC compliance.
Definitely fertile ground for more learning. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into a really complex but fascinating area. We hope you found it useful.
Thinking of exiting your business or taking on a private equity partner to help you grow faster? BizNexus has you covered. Tap into our network of thousands of best-fit investors, acquirers, and proven M&A advisors, and we'll help you begin the relationship confidentially on your terms, your timeline. Learn more at biznexus.com.